The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor like a gunshot in the silent ballroom, drawing every eye in the room to the kid who didn't belong. James Harlan's face burned hotter than the Yule log crackling in the massive stone fireplace, his cheap thrift store blazer suddenly feeling like a neon sign screaming imposter. "Oh God, I'm so sorry," he stammered, dropping to his knees to gather the shards. But a polished loafer stepped in first, size 12, Italian leather, attached to a man who looked like he'd stepped out of a GQ spread. "Leave it," the voice said, low and steady, with that effortless New York edge that made James's stomach flip. Christopher Vale crouched down beside him, his dark eyes locking onto James's with an intensity that pinned him in place. Like the whole glittering chaos of the Waldorf Astoria's annual Christmas gala had narrowed to just this spot on the floor. In that heartbeat, amid the whispers and the clink of silverware resuming like a judgmental orchestra, James knew two things: he'd crashed the wrong table, and the CEO of Vale Enterprises had just become the reason he'd never regret it. It started innocently enough, or as innocent as crashing a black tie fundraiser for homeless youth could be when you were one paycheck away from sleeping on the subway. James had been volunteering at the Bowery Mission that December, dishing out turkey and pie to folks who'd lost more than just their addresses. The gala was their big annual schmooze, pulling in Wall Street fat cats who wrote checks with more zeros than sincerity. James's boss, a harried woman named Rita with a voice like gravel, had roped him into delivering a stack of thank you notes to the venue. "Just drop him at the coat check and get out," she'd said, shoving him toward the subway with a pat on the back. But James, 24 and fresh off a string of dead-end barista gigs in Brooklyn, had always been a dreamer with a side of dumb luck. Peering through the gilded doors, he'd seen the swirl of tuxedos and gowns under chandeliers that dripped like frozen waterfalls, and something reckless stirred in his chest. Why not? He'd thought. One peek won't hurt. Except the doorman, distracted by a tipsy socialite, waved him in like he belonged. Heart pounding, James had snagged a name tag from a discarded pile, James Harlan, Bowery Mission volunteer, and slipped into the crowd, blending like a shadow in a spotlight. The tables were a minefield of power plays, tech bros nursing scotch neat, actresses air-kissing philanthropists, and at the center, Christopher Vale, the 35-year-old wunderkind who'd turned a family shipping empire into a green energy behemoth. James didn't recognize him at first. He wasn't big on Forbes lists. But when he mistook the head table for the volunteer lounge, drawn by the empty seats and the promise of free hors d'oeuvres, he'd plunked down right next to the man himself, fumbling a bread roll like it was a live grenade. Christopher didn't laugh. Didn't call security. Instead, he handed James a napkin with a half-smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "See green under the lights." "Rough night?" he'd asked, as if James were an old frat buddy, not a wide-eyed interloper with scuffed boots under the tablecloth. James had frozen, fork midway to his mouth, the stolen shrimp cocktail suddenly tasting like regret. Yeah. First time at one of these. Total lie." But Christopher leaned back, loosening his tie with a casual flick, and launched into a story about the time he'd spilled red wine on the mayor at his own wedding. The table, for execs in crisp suits, chuckled politely, but James laughed for real, the sound bubbling up like he'd been holding it in for years. By the time the band struck up White Christmas, James was deep in it, trading barbs about New York's brutal winters, Christopher's dry wit slicing through the small talk like a hot knife. The CEO's life unspooled in fragments. Harvard dropout, queer kid from Connecticut who came out swinging in boardrooms that still whispered behind closed doors. James shared scraps of his own. Foster system shuffle. Art school dropout slinging lattes to pay for paints that gathered dust in his closet. Vulnerability hung between them like mistletoe, dangerous and sweet. Then the shatter. The flute had been Christopher's, passed to James in a toast to unexpected guests. In his nerves, James's hand had betrayed him. Shards everywhere, and the room's hush like a held breath. Now, as Christopher helped him up, their fingers brushed electric, accidental, and James felt the world tilt. "You always this graceful?" Christopher teased, voice dropping low enough that only James heard. "Only when I'm trying to impress," James shot back, heart hammering. The execs were staring, one muttering into his phone, but Christopher waved them off. "Party's just getting started. Grab a broom, we'll call it performance art." They swept it up together, knees bumping under the table, laughter cutting the tension. By dessert, tiramisu dusted with gold leaf, James had forgotten he was crashing. Christopher's gaze lingered, warm and probing, like he saw the hunger beneath James's jokes. Not for food, but for a life that fit. As the night wound down, snow flurrying against the windows like confetti from a broken sky, Christopher slipped a card into James's pocket. Plain black stock, embossed gold, Christopher Vale. "Let's do this again. Sober." James's thumb traced the edge, pulse racing. He nodded, words failing, and slipped out into the cold, the city lights blurring through tears he didn't know he'd shed. Back in his cramped Bushwick walk-up, James collapsed onto the futon, card clutched like a talisman. His roommate, Mia, a drag queen by night, barista by day, eyed him from the kitchenette. "Spill, Cinderella. You look like you just fucked a prince." James laughed, shaky. "Worse. I think I just fell for one." Little did he know, across the river in a Tribeca penthouse, Christopher Vale stared at his empty flute glass, replaying the kid's laugh. For the first time in years, the solitude of success felt like a cage cracking open. The text started the next morning. "Coffee? My treat. No crashing required." James stared at his phone over burnt toast, Mia whooping behind him. He typed back, "Only if you promise not to judge my order." Extra foam. Hold the judgment. They met at a hole in the wall in the village. Fairy lights still strung from the holidays, steam fogging the windows. Christopher arrived in jeans and a cashmere sweater, looking every bit the off-duty mogul, but his smile was the same, disarming, real. Over lattes that James drowned in cinnamon, they talked for hours. Christopher's ex, a Wall Street shark who'd bailed when the spotlight got too hot. James's parade of almosts, guys who ghosted when rent day loomed. "You're not like them," Christopher said, stirring his black coffee. "You see the mess and still show up." James shrugged, cheeks warm. "Mess is my middle name." By week's end, they were inseparable, ice skating at Bryant Park, where Christopher's gloved hand steadied James's wobbles. Midnight runs along the Hudson, breaths puffing like dragons in the frost. Christmas Eve, James cooked spaghetti carbonara from a YouTube tutorial in his tiny kitchen, Mia banished to a friend's for the night. Christopher showed up with a bottle of Chianti and a wrapped gift. A sketchbook, leather-bound, pages thick as promise. "Draw me," Christopher murmured later, sprawled on the futon, fire escape snow drifting past the window. James's pencil trembled, capturing the curve of his jaw, the vulnerability in repose. Their first kiss happened there, tentative then fierce, tasting of wine and want. James's world expanded, colors brighter, the city's grind softened by Christopher's hand in his. But shadows lurked. Christopher's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Elena, started screening calls. "Boards breathing down his neck," she'd say, voice clipped. James brushed it off. Love like this didn't bend to spreadsheets. Until New Year's, when the first crack showed. They were at a rooftop party in Soho, fireworks blooming over the skyline. Christopher's phone buzzed incessantly. He stepped away, voice low. James caught fragments. Discreet. Image. Family name. When he returned, his smile was strained. "Work bullshit," James nodded, but the seed planted. Who was he, really, in this polished orbit? A poor boy from nowhere, crashing tables and hearts. January thawed into a brutal rhythm. James landed a gig at a midtown gallery, part-time curator's assistant, minimum wage but soul-feeding, while Christopher jetted between board meetings and Davos schmoozes. Their nights were stolen. Takeout in Christopher's loft, bodies tangled under Egyptian cotton, whispers tracing scars neither had shared fully. James sketched Christopher asleep, the CEO's empire forgotten in the quiet. Christopher left voicemails, gravelly with fatigue. "Miss your laugh. Come over when the world's done chewing me up." But the world was a jealous beast. Rumors slithered through Christopher's circles, whispers of the Bowery boy on his arm, laced with classist barbs and homophobic jabs from old money holdouts. One evening, over steak at Peter Luger, Christopher's fork paused midair. "They're pushing back. Say I'm distracted. Unfocused." James's gut twisted. "Because of me?" Christopher's hand covered his, thumb stroking knuckles. "Because they're assholes who fear change. You're the best thing I've chased in years." They sealed it with a kiss that tasted like steak and resolve. But doubt festered. James threw himself into work, curating a show on street artists, raw, unapologetic voices from Brooklyn alleys. Opening night, Christopher arrived late, tie askew, Elena trailing like a storm cloud. She cornered James by the wine. He needs stability, not distractions. Think about it. James's smile cracked. "I'm not a side hustle." She arched a brow. "Aren't you?" Christopher pulled him away, oblivious, toasting the crowd with a speech that name-dropped James like a revelation. The room applauded, but James felt exposed, a footnote in someone else's legend. February brought blizzards and betrayals small at first. Cancelled dinners, excuses piling like snowdrifts. James filled the voids with Mia's crew, drag brunches in the East Village, where glitter outshone grief. "Babe, he's got one foot in the closet of capitalism," Mia drawled over mimosas. "Don't let him dim your sparkle." James laughed it off. But alone, he scrolled Christopher's feed. Power lunches, charity galas, no trace of him. The sketchbook gathered dust. Valentine's shattered the fragile peace. Christopher booked a weekend in the Hamptons, snowshoeing, fireside sex, the ocean's roar as their soundtrack. James packed light, jeans, hope, a bottle of lube. At the airport, though, Elena intercepted. Emergency board vote. He's stuck in D.C. James's phone buzzed minutes later. "Stuck? Babe. Rain check. Love you. Love." The word landed like a grenade, shrapnel of joy and ache. He spent the night at a dive bar in Hell's Kitchen, shots blurring the edges. A guy tall, tattooed, with eyes like trouble, bought him around. "You look like you need forgetting." They tumbled into a cab, hands roaming, but James's mind screamed wrong. He bolted at his stop, cab fare forgotten, running through slush until his lungs burned. Christopher called at dawn. "I'm coming back. We need to talk." They met at the loft, city waking gray below. Christopher looked wrecked, stubble shadowing his jaw, eyes red-rimmed. The vote was a setup. "Old guard ambushed me. Said I'd tanked a merger with personal indiscretions." "They mean you." James's throat tightened. "So what? Fight them." "I am." Christopher pulled him close, foreheads touching. "But it's ugly. Threats to pull funding from the youth programs we both care about. I can't let them hurt the causes you're fighting for." The word anchored him. They made love slow, reclaiming ground, bodies mapping forgiveness. Afterward, tangled in sheets, Christopher traced James's spine. "Marry me. Not now, fuck. Not legally yet, but promise me. We'll build something real, away from their noise." James's yes was a sob, sealed with salt and skin. Spring bloomed tentative. Cherry blossoms in Central Park. Christopher clearing his calendar for gallery crawls. James's art show extending thanks to a quiet donation. Christopher's doing, uncredited. But Elena's shadow lengthened. James caught her emails on Christopher's open laptop. PR nightmare. Leak the ex's dirt, or phase out the boy toy? Christopher deleted them unread, but the poison seeped. May brought the climax. A Vail Enterprises summit in Miami. All sun and strategy. James tagged along. His first taste of first class. Mimosas at dawn. Christopher's arm possessive around his waist. Poolside. Execs thawed, toasting James's fresh perspective. Even Elena softened, or so it seemed, clinking glasses with a tight smile. That night, in their suite overlooking Biscayne Bay, lightning cracked the sky. They fucked with the windows open, thunder drowning moans, rain sheeting like applause. "You're mine," Christopher growled, marks blooming on James's hips. "No one's taking this." Morning brought hangover haze and horror. James woke to Christopher's side empty. A note. Meeting ran long. "Order room service." "Love." He did, scrolling news over Eggs Benedict. Then his phone lit up. "Mia. Babe. Check page 6. The headline gutted him. Vail's secret surrender. CEO dumps downtown Muse for merger. Photos. Christopher at the summit. Arm around a venture capitalist named Trent. Tall, blonde, old money gay with a pedigree that screamed safe. Elena's quote. Christopher's focused on the future. Personal matters resolved. James's vision tunneled. He packed blindly, cab to the airport a blur of tears. Christopher's texts piled. "It's not what, call me." Blocked. Back in Brooklyn, he shattered, literally, hurling the sketchbook at the wall, pages fluttering like broken wings. Mia found him curled on the floor, sobbing. "He sold us out for a deal." She held him through the night, rocking like a mother he never had. "Poor boys don't get princes. Honey. We get the fight." Weeks blurred. Gallery shifts on autopilot. Sketches turning dark. Jagged lines of betrayal. Christopher's face twisted into a stranger. Protests downtown kept him moving. Fists raised for causes bigger than heartbreak. One night, drunk on cheap gin, he hooked up with an activist from the March Rough. Anonymous, a purge that left him hollower. Christopher's calls went to voicemail. Please raw, James. Elena twisted it. Trent's a beard cover for the board. I fixed the merger without him. Please. I love you. James deleted them, but the words echoed. A siren's call. June sweltered, city air thick as regret. James's show toured to LA, his breakthrough. Reviews calling him the voice of the overlooked. Christopher sent flowers. White lilies. Card blank but for coordinates to a spot in Griffith Park. James burned them, ashes scattering like secrets. Yet doubt gnawed. At a rooftop after-party, overlooking the Hollywood sign, a producer cornered him. Heard your Vale's ex. That merger saved his ass. But word is he tanked it anyway, pulled out last minute for personal reasons. Guy's got balls. James's drink soured. For me, flight back was torture. Resolve cracking mile by mile. Landing at JFK. Rain lashed the tarmac, mirroring the storm inside. He didn't go home. Instead, subway to Tribeca, pounding on the loft door until it swung open. Christopher stood there, shirtless, eyes hollowed by shadows. James, you idiot, James choked, shoving past him. You threw us away for what? To protect me? From boardroom bullies. Christopher closed the door, hands trembling. I thought space would shield you. Elena. She had dirt. Fabricated, but enough to drag your name through mud. I fixed it, fired her, killed the merger. Lost millions. But you're worth it. Silence stretched. Electric. James's fist clenched, then unclenched, reaching instead. Their collision was desperate. Kisses bruising. Apologies gasped between breaths. They fell to the rug, reclaiming lost ground, bodies fierce with forgiveness. But trust was a fragile rebuild. No more secrets, James demanded. Later, heads pillowed on each other's chests. None, Christopher vowed, fingers interlacing. We're in this. All in. Summer deepened their bond. Road trip upstate. Skinny dipping in Adirondack lakes. Christopher learning to weld at James's community workshop. Vulnerability flowed. Christopher admitting the isolation of the closet in corporate America. James confessing fears of being the poor kid forever. Fall whispered warnings. Christopher's board circled. Vultures scenting blood from the botched merger. Whispers of a hostile takeover, fueled by Elena's leaked memos. They want me out, he confessed one crimson-leaved evening in Prospect Park. Say I'm too soft. Too. Me. James squeezed his hand. Then burn it down. Start fresh. With me. The idea sparked. A new venture. Green tech for underserved communities. Christopher's vision. James's heart. They pitched it over bourbon in dive bars. Passion igniting allies. November chilled the air. Leaves crunching underfoot like brittle promises. The takeover loomed. A shareholder vote in 2 weeks. Christopher's legacy on the line. Board meetings stretched into all-nighters. James waited with takeout and sketches. His presence a quiet rebellion. You're not soft, he'd murmur, massaging knotted shoulders. You're steel wrapped in silk, but steel bends under pressure. One night, James arrived unannounced to the office tower, a brownstone bag of tie swinging from his fist. The lobby gleamed sterile, security nodding him up. 32nd floor, Glass walls framing Christopher's domain. City lights a glittering jury. The door was ajar. Voices leaked. Low. Urgent. James paused. Food warming his side like a guilty secret. He's poison. Chris. Elena, no. She'd been fired. This was Harlan. Though. Silver fox with a shark's grin. That artist's dragging you down. Public's eating up the slum romance angle. Investors bolt when they smell scandal. Christopher's reply. Edged. James is the reason I'm fighting this. He's real. Unlike you vultures. Harlan chuckled. Oily. Real? Kid's a liability. We leak his foster records, abuse allegations. Juvie stint? Poof. Merger's back on. You're golden. Silence. James's blood iced. Juvie? A shoplift at 16. Bread for his sister's birthday. Expunged. Buried. How? Christopher. Touch him, and you're done. But the pause before hesitation or strategy. Harlan's laugh slithered out. Loyalty's cute. But board votes tomorrow. Choose us or your pretty boy toy. Door clicked shut. James backed away. Bag forgotten on the carpet. Fleeing to the elevator like a ghost. Outside. Wind whipped his tears. Subway home a numb rattle. He didn't confront. Instead, distance. Texts sparse. Busy with show prep. Christopher's worry texts piled. Talk to me. What's wrong? Thanksgiving loomed. A Harlan family tradition Christopher couldn't skip. Connecticut estate. Turkey and tension. James declined the invite. Gallery event. Go be the golden boy. He spent it with Mia's chosen family. Drag queens in turkey crowns. Laughter masking the hollow. Christopher called post-feast. Voice slurred on eggnog. Miss you. Harlan's full of shit. I shut him down. James's resolve cracked. Did you? Or just by time? Silence stretched oceanic. What do you mean? The door was open. I heard. The words tumbled. Betrayal's raw edge. Foster ghosts unearthed. Christopher swore. Denial's fierce. Harlan's bluff exposed. I'd never, James. You're my everything. They met at dawn. Central Park shrouded in fog. Christopher arrived running. Breath clouds in the chill. Believe me. I recorded it, insurance. He's out. James searched his eyes. Storm-tossed. Sincere. Prove it. Christopher did. Phone playback. Harlan's venom crystallized. Then, on a bench slick with dew, he dropped to one knee, not proposal, but plea. Ringless. Raw stay. Fight with me. James pulled him up. Kiss sealing the pact. Always. December roared in. Vote day a battlefield. Christopher's pitch, rebranding Vale as inclusive. Community first, landed like thunder. Allies rallied. Whispers of James's influence spun positive. The human touch. Harlan's faction crumbled. Vote swung 52 to 48. Victory tasted like champagne and sweat. Boardroom erupting in cautious claps. After party at the loft. James. Mia. A handful of loyalists. Christopher hoisted James onto the counter, kissing him amid cheers. We did it. We. The word wove their futures. But victory's shadow lingered. Christmas approached. Anniversary of the shatter. Christopher planned big. Gala redux. But intimate, the Bowery Mission's holiday bash. Volunteering side by side. Full circle, he said. Eyes alight. James agreed. heart swelling. He sketched their story, shards to stars, a graphic novel pitch for the new venture's launch. Eve of Christmas Eve, though, Elena resurfaced, not fired cleanly, Harlan's puppet, reinstated in the shuffle. She cornered Christopher at a strategy lunch. Leaked docs incoming. Your boy's past? Child Services reports. He'll bolt or worse, sue for exposure. Christopher's fury was arctic. End it, or I bury you, she smirked. Too late. That night, James's phone buzzed. Anonymous email. Attachments like knives, redacted files, his 16-year-old mugshot blurred but unmistakable. Ask your prince about the price of loyalty. He confronted Christopher at the loft, printouts trembling. You knew, Christopher paled. No, Harlan threatened, but I stopped it. This is retaliation. Liar. James's voice broke. You played me. Merger cover. Now this? I'm your redemption arc. Not your love. Christopher reached. James flinched. I love you. End of story. Stories have twists. James stormed out, snow swallowing his sobs. Subways blurred stations. He ended at Mia's, collapsing into her arms. It's over. She stroked his hair. Or just the intermission. Christmas morning dawned brittle. James woke to silence. Phone dark. No texts. He dragged to the mission, volunteering on autopilot, ladling soup, forcing smiles for kids with eyes too old. Then the door chimed. Christopher, coat dusted white, carrying trays of pie. No entourage, just him vulnerable, hat in hand. I quit, he said, voice steady. Walked from Vale. Harlan can have it. We're starting clean, our company, our rules. James's ladle clattered. You. What? Sold my shares. Enough to fund the Green Initiative. No boards, no games. Just us. Building something real. He stepped closer, high-balanced like an offering. I choose you. Every time. Tears blurred the steam. James whispered, Idiot. Christopher grinned. You're idiot. They served together, hands brushing over bowls, laughter tentative then true. Kids clamored for stories. Christopher spun one of a boy at a wrong table, finding home. Later, walking snow-draped streets, Christopher stopped under a street lamp's halo. Marry me. For real. Vegas. Courthouse, your call. James's yes was snowflake soft, kiss melting the world. The new year unfurled like a blank canvas, raw and ripe. Their venture, Harbor Lights Initiative, took shape in a Soho loft, salvaged beams and exposed brick echoing James's sketches. Christopher traded boardrooms for blueprints, sleeves rolled, learning solar specs from community engineers. James curated the brand, murals by street artists, logos inked with hope. Mornings started tangled in bed, coffee brewed amid blueprints. Evenings ended with takeout and dreams, fingers tracing futures on skin. But scars itch. Harlan's leak festered online, tabloids twisting James's past into clickbait. CEO's toy boy, from foster flop to penthouse heartbreak, trolls swarmed socials, slurs laced with class hate. Christopher shielded him, lawyers on speed dial, countersuits flying, but James felt the weight, poor boy's armor cracking. You're not a flop, Christopher growled one night, after deleting a barrage of DMs. They were on the fire escape, city hum below, Joints passed in quiet rebellion. You're the spark. James exhaled smoke. A spark that almost burned us down. Christopher pulled him close, lips brushing temple. Nah. Refined us. Spring greened the edges. First grant landed. A community solar array in the Bronx. Groundbreaking was chaos. Politicos posing. Kids from the mission cheering. James emceed. Voice steady. Turning his story into strength. From wrong tables to right fights. This is for the overlooked. Christopher watched. Pride swelling. Hands slipping into James's pocket later. You're a force. Their wedding brewed casual. June. City Hall. Mia officiating in sequins. Vows were messy. Christopher choking on. I promise to shatter with you. James laughing through. No more crashing alone. Rings simple. Hammered silver. Engraved shards to stars. Honeymoon was road-tripped. Route 66 in a vintage Mustang. Motels with neon buzz. Deserts blurring into possibility. They fucked under star-pricked skies. Bodies mapped by mileage. Talked legacies over diner pie. Christopher's fear of becoming his absent dad. James's ache for the sister lost to the system. Back east. Success snowballed. Harbor lights scaled. Panels on low-income roofs. Jobs for ex-felons. Art-integrated hubs. Investors circled, not vultures, but believers. Media flipped. Queer power couple revolutionizes renewables. Pride marches became their runway. Hands linked against jeers. But conflict coiled. Fall brought a big fish. A California conglomerate sniffing acquisition. Billions. Their advisor cooed over sushi in Midtown. Legacy secured. Christopher's jaw tightened. Or sold. James, sketching logos nearby, paused. What's the catch? Rebrand. Tone down the activist edge. More corporate sheen. Nights brewed tension. Christopher pacing. James sketching furious abstracts. We built this free, James argued. Charcoal smudging his frustration. Don't cage it. It's security, Christopher countered. Voice strained. For us. Kids. Someday. James's pencil snapped. Kids? We're barely us. The fight escalated. Words like shrapnel. Christopher accusing James of naivete. James hurling sellout like the gala glass. Door slammed. James crashed at Mia's. Gut churning. Morning brought regret. Christopher's text. Coffee? Truce. Neutral ground. Park bench. Leaves gold and gone. I panicked, Christopher admitted. Hands raw without a tie to twist. Dad's voice in my head. Secure the bag. Son, but you're right. We're the bag. Forgiveness was slow. Therapy sessions in a village walk-up. Unpacking closets literal and not. Christopher opened up the bi awakening in college. Buried for boardroom climbs. James grieved aloud. Foster wounds bleeding ink onto pages. Winter whispered redemption. Harlan's empire crumbled. Scandal sheets exposed his leaks. SEC sniffing fraud. He called Christopher. Voice vinegar. You ruined me, Christopher. Arm around James at a holiday market. Nah. You did that yourself. Christmas circled back. Mission gala. Now there's to host. Tables groaned under donations. Kids in new coats. James and Christopher emceed. Toasting full circles. Under the tree. A gift. James's graphic novel. Published, shards. Their story illustrated. Proceeds to youth shelters. But humanity's arc bends toward ache. Spring tested. A kid from the program. 17 and queer, outed by family, mirroring James's ghost. They mentored him, nights of talks, Christopher sharing coming-out war stories, James drawing his pain into power. Climax crested Memorial Day, conglomerate deadline. Board now there's diverse and fierce voted no. We stay indie, Christopher declared, voice thunder. Or what's the point? Fallout hit hard, funding dip, layoffs looming. Protests brewed, not against them, but inspired workers unionizing, banners waving harbor lights ethos. Media storm, power couples stand, romance over riches, betrayals echo, internal, a junior exec, Harlan's plant, siphon grants. Discovery crushed, audits, firings, trust fractured anew. Christopher blamed himself. I should have vetted harder. Nights lost to spreadsheets, guilt carving hollows under his eyes. James anchored. We rebuild. Together, they did. Crowdfunding surged. Community rallies packed lofts. The thief confessed. Remorse raw. Forgiveness extended. Second chances their creed. Summer solstice. Rooftop vow renewal. Stars witnesses. To messes, Christopher toasted. Glasses clinking. To making them art, James replied. Autumn deepened resolve. Harbor lights pivoted. Microgrants for queer artists. Solar scholarships for foster kids. James's shards hit bestseller lists. Graphic novel turned off-Broadway play. Mia directing. Camp as Christmas. Christopher narrated panels. Voice cracking on their shatter scene. But life's drama peaks in whispers. November brought news. Christopher's dad, long estranged, cancer-eaten, reaching out from Connecticut. Endgame, the letter read, frail script begging reconciliation. Christopher stared at it over breakfast, bagel untouched. He disowned me. For this, hand gestured vague. Love, life, them. James squeezed his knee under the table. Go. Not for him, for you. Drive was ghosts. Merritt Parkway lined in fading fire. Radio humming oldies. Estate loomed. Colonial relic of repression. Dad withered. Oxygen tube snaking. Eyed Christopher like a stranger. Heard you're married. Christopher nodded, throat bobbing. James. Artist. Partner. Silence choked the room. Then, rasp. Proud. Finally, tears tracked Christopher's cheeks. He held the hand that once pushed away. James waited in the hall, sketching eavesdropped grace. Back in the city, catharsis flowed. Christopher lighter, pitching bolder. Holidays hummed, Thanksgiving at the Mission, tables bridged by stories. Christmas Eve mirrored their start. James crashing, Christopher's solo tree trimming. Champagne flutes balanced warily. To right wrongs, Christopher toasted, eyes locked. To endless encores, James echoed, kiss-sealing seasons. New Year dawned ambitious. Harbor Lights Global, pilot in Oakland, queer-led. But humanity humbles. A storm hit the Bronx Array, panels shattered like gala glass. Rebuild rallied community, nights of hammers and hope, Christopher's blisters matching James's calluses. Climax crested spring. Annual gala, now there's head table, survivors, not suits. Speech time, Christopher at podium, James beside. We started with a crash, he began, voice carrying. A boy at the wrong table. But love, it writes everything. Applause thundered. James's heart swelled. Backstage. Alone. Christopher knelt. Ring this time. Sapphire-eyed. Marry me again. Every year. James laughed, pulling him up. Deal. But betrayal's ghost stirred final. Elena, from shadows, emailed ultimatum, stolen docs, leverage for payout. Christopher's thumb hovered delete. James stopped him. Forward it. Let karma close the book. Feds pounced. Elena cuffed in dawn raid. Empire's last gasp. No triumph. Just quiet justice over coffee. Human. Ha! James mused. Flawed as fuck. Christopher nodded, arm curling round. But worth it. Summer solstice. Beach in Fire Island. Waves lapping vows. They danced barefoot. Fireflies' lanterns. Bodies swaying to unspoken symphonies. Fall harvested fruits. Shards film greenlit. Christopher exec producing. James consulting. Protests peaked. Harbor lights banners at marches. Power for the powered out. Winter whispered legacy. Adopting from the system. A boy named Alex. Wide-eyed. Wary. First Christmas. Tree strung with shards. Literal. Glued into stars. Alex's laugh echoed the shatter. Remade melody. Years blurred. 30s to 40s. Lofts to brownstones. Crashes to cradles. Conflicts came, funding famines. Family feuds, but climaxed in connection. Boardrooms bent to their vision. Betrayals buried in board books. Ending humanistic. Not Hollywood. No tidy bows, but threads woven tight. One Christmas. Gala graying at temples. James at the wrong table again, now hosting. Flute raised. Eyes on Christopher across decades. To the boy who stayed. Christopher's smile. Timeless. To the CEO who learned. They clinked. Shards long mended. Love's mosaic enduring. In America's grind, hustle and heart. They carved home. Flawed. Fierce. Forever. Epilogue whisper. Alex. Grown. Sketching his own shatter. Your story? He asks. James glances at Christopher. Hand warm in his. Ours. Keep drawing.